I never thought the day would come when my own parents would demand $139,000 from me for my sister's wedding, especially after they refused to help me pay for college years earlier. The irony burned through me like acid as I held the phone, listening to my mother's entitled voice explaining how I owed the family this contribution. I remembered those crushing words from 8 years ago when they told me money doesn't grow on trees, forcing me to work 3 jobs just to afford my education. Now, sitting in my beautiful apartment that I earned through blood, sweat, and sleepless nights, they expected me to bankroll my spoiled sister's extravagant celebration. The sound of my mother's voice still echoed in my ears as I set the phone down on my granite kitchen counter. Margaret's words had transported me back to that devastating afternoon 8 years ago, when I'd walked into our family living room with college acceptance letters clutched in my trembling hands. I had been 18 then, filled with dreams of studying computer science at the state university. My grades were solid, my test scores respectable, but the financial aid package left a gap of $25,000 per year that felt insurmountable for a kid from our middle-class neighborhood. "Mom, Dad, I got into state," I had announced, my voice cracking with hope and desperation. "But I need help with the tuition." My father, Robert, had barely looked up from his evening newspaper, his graying mustache twitching with annoyance. "Denver, we've talked about this. Money doesn't grow on trees. You're 18 now. Time to figure things out for yourself." Margaret had been polishing her new diamond bracelet, a gift Robert had surprised her with the week before. "Honey, we simply cannot afford to help. You'll have to get loans or work more hours at that coffee place." The crushing weight of their refusal had settled over me like a suffocating blanket. What made it worse was looking through the living room window at the driveway, where their brand-new BMW SUV gleamed in the afternoon sun. They had purchased it just 2 months earlier, trading in a perfectly good sedan because Margaret wanted something more prestigious for her real estate career. "But you just bought that car," I had stammered, pointing toward the window. "And aren't you guys going to Europe next month?" Robert's face had flushed red with irritation. "That's completely different. That trip is a business expense for your mother's career, and we needed reliable transportation. Those are investments in our future." "What about investing in my future?" I had pleaded, my teenage voice breaking with emotion. "Your future is your responsibility," Margaret had replied coldly, never pausing in her bracelet polishing. "We've fed you, clothed you, and housed you for 18 years. That's our obligation done. Everything else is up to you." Those words had shattered something inside me that day. While other families pooled resources to help their children succeed, mine had drawn a line in the sand at my 18th birthday. I had walked out of that house feeling more alone than I ever thought possible. The next 4 years had been a relentless grind of survival and determination. I had taken a job at Sacred Grounds Coffee, arriving at 4:30 in the morning to prep for the breakfast rush. After classes, I stocked shelves at Peterson's Grocery until 11 at night. Weekends meant tutoring younger students in mathematics and science, scraping together every dollar I could find. My apartment had been a cramped studio above a laundromat, where the constant rumble of washers and dryers made studying nearly impossible. I had survived on ramen noodles, peanut butter sandwiches, and the occasional free meal from sympathetic professors who noticed my dedication despite my obvious exhaustion. But I had made it through. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in computer science and immediately landed a position at Technovision Solutions, a growing software company in the heart of downtown. 8 years later, I was a senior software engineer, earning $120,000 annually, living in a downtown loft with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city skyline. My success hadn't come from family connections or inherited wealth. Every achievement represented countless hours of sacrifice. Every comfort in my current life had been earned through pure determination and refusal to accept defeat, which made my mother's phone call today so particularly galling. "Denver, darling, we need to discuss Madison's wedding." Margaret had begun in that syrupy tone she used when she wanted something. "She's planned such a beautiful celebration, and as her successful big brother, we know you'll want to contribute." The audacity had literally taken my breath away. "Contribute how much, exactly?" "Well, the venue alone is $60,000. And with the flowers, photography, catering, and dress, we're looking at approximately $139,000 total. We thought you could handle the major expenses." I had nearly dropped the phone. "You want me to pay $139,000 for Madison's wedding?" It's not just paying, Denver. It's investing in family happiness. Madison has dreamed of this day since she was a little girl, and you have the means to make her dreams come true. The same parents who had told me to figure out my own future were now demanding I fund my sister's fairy tale wedding. The same people who had claimed financial hardship while buying luxury cars and taking European vacations expected me to open my wallet for their princess. Did Madison ask me directly? I had demanded. She shouldn't have to ask. Family takes care of family. We're all so proud of your success, and this is how successful people show their love. The manipulation was so transparent, it made my stomach turn. They hadn't shown pride in my success when I was struggling through college. They hadn't offered help when I was eating one meal a day to afford textbooks. But now that I had money, suddenly I was the beloved son whose family obligations included bankrolling extravagant celebrations. As I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by the fruits of my labor, I felt that familiar surge of anger and determination. The same emotions that had carried me through 4 years of poverty and exhaustion were rising again. But this time, I wasn't a desperate teenager. I was a successful adult with resources and options. My phone buzzed with a text message from Madison. Mom told me the great news. Can't wait to go over wedding plans with you. Coming over tomorrow night to show you everything we've picked out. You're the best brother ever. The presumption was staggering. They had already decided I would pay, had already made plans based on my money, had already committed me to expenses I had never agreed to cover. The entitlement was breathtaking in its scope and audacity. I walked to my living room window and looked out at the city lights twinkling below. Somewhere out there were other young people grinding through college, working multiple jobs, surviving on determination and hope. They deserved better than what I had received from my family. They deserved support and encouragement, not abandonment and later exploitation. Tomorrow would bring confrontations I wasn't looking forward to, but I had faced worse challenges before. If my family wanted to treat me like an ATM machine, they were about to learn that this particular account had strict withdrawal policies. The next evening arrived with the subtle persistence of an unwelcome storm. I had spent the day at work trying to concentrate on debugging a complex software issue, but my mind kept drifting to the inevitable confrontation awaiting me at home. At precisely 6:15, the building's security system buzzed with an incoming visitor. Denver, it's Madison. Come down and help me with all this stuff. My sister's voice crackled through the intercom with the cheerful enthusiasm of someone who believed the world existed to accommodate her desires. When the elevator doors opened on the ground floor, I found Madison surrounded by what appeared to be the entire contents of a bridal boutique. Fabric samples draped over her arms, thick wedding planning binders balanced against her hip, and shopping bags from exclusive stores created a colorful mountain around her feet. Surprise, she announced, her smile radiant with the confidence of someone who had never heard the word no applied to her wishes. I brought everything, so you can see exactly where your investment is going. Madison had always been the family favorite, a position she wore as naturally as the designer clothing our parents had always provided. At 24, she possessed the kind of effortless beauty that opened doors and softened hearts, with cascade of blonde hair and bright blue eyes that sparkled with perpetual optimism. She had never worked a full-time job, never worried about rent money, never experienced the gnawing anxiety of checking bank account balances before buying groceries. Investment, I repeated, helping her gather the scattered materials. When did I agree to invest in anything? Oh, Denver, don't be silly. Mom explained how excited you are to make my wedding dreams come true. She said you were practically jumping out of your skin with enthusiasm. The elevator ride to my apartment was a masterclass in uncomfortable silence, punctuated by Madison's constant chatter about photographers and florists. She seemed genuinely oblivious to my growing tension, chattering away about centerpiece options and menu tastings with the breezy confidence of someone whose biggest decision typically involved choosing between different shades of nail polish. Once inside my apartment, Madison transformed my living room into a wedding planning command center with startling efficiency. She spread fabric samples across my leather sofa, arranged vendor contracts on my coffee table, and propped enlarged photographs of potential venues against my bookshelf. So this is the Grandview Manor, she began, pointing to a photograph of an elegant estate surrounded by manicured gardens. The ceremony would be in the Rose Garden, and the reception in the grand ballroom. It's absolutely magical. Denver, you should see the way the chandeliers catch the light during sunset. The enthusiasm in her voice was genuine and infectious, but I found myself focusing on the price tag attached to the venue photograph. $60,000 for a single day's rental. Madison. This is a lot of money we're talking about. I know, she agreed, clapping her hands together with delight. Isn't it wonderful that you've been so successful? Tyler and I felt terrible about the expense, until Mom reminded us that this is exactly the kind of thing successful brothers do for their little sisters. Tyler Morrison was Madison's fiancé, a 26-year-old aspiring musician who had been pursuing his dreams with remarkable dedication but limited financial success. He worked part-time at a music store while performing at coffee shops and local venues, hoping for his big break in the entertainment industry. Pleasant enough company, and genuinely devoted to Madison, but hardly in a position to finance a six-figure wedding celebration. Madison continued her presentation with the polished efficiency of a seasoned salesperson. She showed me photographs from the engagement ring selection process, including detailed shots of the stunning 3-carat diamond that had cost our parents $30,000. Dad was so sweet about the ring, she gushed, holding up her hand to catch the light. He said every princess deserves a crown, and this would be mine until the wedding day when Tyler gives me an even more beautiful one. The casual mention of a $30,000 engagement ring sent a chill through my chest. Our parents had claimed financial hardship when I needed college assistance, yet they had recently purchased jewelry worth more than half my annual tuition costs. Mom mentioned you already promised Samantha the down payment, Madison continued, referring to her wedding planner. She's holding the Grandview Manor date specifically for us because you guaranteed the financing. My blood pressure spiked dangerously. I guaranteed nothing. I haven't even met this wedding planner. Oh, that's just a technicality. Mom spoke with Samantha on your behalf and explained that you prefer to handle business matters through family intermediaries. Samantha completely understood. She said lots of successful professionals delegate wedding planning logistics to their relatives. The audacity was staggering. My parents had committed me to financial obligations without my knowledge or consent, had promised vendors that I would cover expenses I had never agreed to pay, had essentially forged my commitment through verbal contracts, made by unauthorized representatives. Madison pulled out her phone and began scrolling through photographs from recent vendor meetings. Here is us with the florist last Tuesday. She's creating the most incredible arrangements with imported Dutch tulips and hand-blown glass vases, and look at this cake design. She showed me pictures of an elaborate 5-tier wedding cake decorated with intricate fondant flowers and gold leaf details. The pastry chef had obviously spent considerable time developing the design, working under the assumption that payment was guaranteed through my commitment. Madison, how much have Mom and Dad already spent on wedding preparations? Oh, I don't worry about those details. Dad handles all the financial arrangements, and Mom coordinates with the vendors. They told me I should focus on being a beautiful bride and let the business-minded family members handle everything else. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. Our parents had created an elaborate financial structure around my assumed participation, had made commitments, and signed contracts based on money they expected me to provide, had essentially built a house of cards that would collapse without my financial foundation. Denver, I brought something special to show you. Madison reached into her largest shopping bag and pulled out a thick leather portfolio. These are all the vendor contracts and expense breakdowns. Samantha prepared everything so you can see exactly where each dollar is being allocated. She opened the portfolio to reveal meticulous spreadsheets detailing every aspect of the wedding budget: venue rental, catering costs, photography packages, floral arrangements, music entertainment, transportation, accommodations for out-of-town guests. The organization was impressive, the attention to detail remarkable, and the total cost absolutely staggering. See how efficiently everything is planned? Samantha says the key to a successful wedding is transparent financial management and clear communication between all parties. As I scanned the documents, a particular line item caught my attention. Under miscellaneous expenses was an entry for $15,000 labeled Family Loan Repayment. What's this family loan repayment? Madison glanced at the line item and waved dismissively. Oh, that's just some money Mom and Dad borrowed from Uncle Harold to get the planning started. They needed to secure vendors quickly during wedding season, so Harold helped with the initial deposits. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My parents hadn't just committed my money for future expenses. They had already borrowed against my assumed contribution to fund current wedding preparations. They had involved other family members in their financial scheme, creating a web of obligations that extended beyond our immediate household. Madison, does Uncle Harold know that his loan repayment depends on my contribution? I suppose he must. I mean, everyone knows you're handling the major expenses. It's been the main topic of conversation at every family gathering for the past 3 months. 3 months. My parents had been publicly committing me to wedding expenses for 3 months without ever directly asking for my agreement. They had told extended family members, wedding vendors, and apparently everyone except me about my financial responsibilities for this celebration. The front door of my apartment suddenly shook with aggressive knocking. Madison looked up from her wedding planning materials with surprise. "Are you expecting someone?" Before I could answer, the knocking intensified and my mother's voice called through the door. "Denver, open up. We need to talk right now." Madison's face lit up with excitement. "Perfect timing. Mom probably has news about the final vendor confirmations." As I walked toward the door, my stomach churned with the anticipation of confrontation. The evening was about to become significantly more complicated, and based on my mother's tone, the conversation would not be pleasant. The aggressive knocking continued as I approached my front door, accompanied by muffled voices that suggested my mother hadn't arrived alone. When I opened the door, the hallway was filled with what appeared to be a family intervention squad. Margaret stood at the front of the group, her perfectly styled silver hair and immaculate burgundy suit suggesting she had dressed for battle. Behind her, my father Robert shifted uncomfortably in his weekend casual clothes, his receding hairline beaded with nervous perspiration. Uncle Harold and Aunt Patricia flanked them like reinforcements, while my 78-year-old grandmother Dorothy leaned heavily on her carved wooden cane. "Denver, we need to have an emergency family discussion," Margaret announced, pushing past me into the apartment without invitation. "Madison's wedding is in jeopardy, and we must resolve this immediately." The impromptu family gathering transformed my living room into a cramped tribunal. Madison quickly gathered her wedding planning materials to make space for the unexpected visitors, her cheerful demeanor faltering as she sensed the tension crackling through the air. Uncle Harold, a stocky man with kind eyes and prematurely gray hair, settled into my armchair with obvious discomfort. He owned a small plumbing business and had always been the family peacemaker, the relative everyone turned to during financial emergencies or emotional crises. "Denver, son, we're all here because we care about you and want to understand what's happening," Harold began in his gentle, measured tone. "Your parents are worried there's been some kind of misunderstanding about Madison's wedding." Aunt Patricia, Harold's wife of 32 years, perched on the edge of my sofa with the rigid posture of someone preparing for an unpleasant conversation. She worked as a nurse at the local hospital and possessed the kind of practical wisdom that came from years of dealing with human crisis and tragedy. "Harold, there's no misunderstanding," Patricia interjected sharply. "Denver is being selfish and forgetting his family obligations." Grandmother Dorothy lowered herself slowly into the remaining chair, her arthritis making every movement deliberate and painful. She had been the family matriarch for decades, the woman whose approval everyone sought and whose disappointment everyone feared. "Denver, darling, I've come here tonight because your parents are heartbroken," Dorothy said in her wavering voice. "After everything they've done for you, they can't understand why you're abandoning Madison during the most important time of her life." The coordinated nature of this intervention was becoming clear. My parents had recruited the most emotionally influential family members to create maximum psychological pressure. They were using my love and respect for Uncle Harold and Grandmother Dorothy as weapons to force my compliance. Robert cleared his throat and pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket. "Denver, I've prepared a list of everything your mother and I have invested in your upbringing. I think it's important for you to understand the scope of our financial commitment to your success." He began reading from his handwritten calculations with the solemnity of someone presenting evidence in court. 18 years of food, clothing, and housing. Medical expenses including emergency room visits and dental work. Christmas and birthday presents. Summer camp fees. School supplies and extracurricular activities. Transportation costs for school events and social activities. Margaret nodded approvingly as Robert continued his itemized presentation. "When we add everything together, including reasonable estimates for inflation and opportunity costs, your parents have invested approximately $160,000 in your development." The mathematical manipulation was breathtaking in its audacity. They had assigned monetary values to basic parental responsibilities, had calculated the cost of love and care, had transformed 18 years of family relationship into a business transaction with outstanding debt. Based on these calculations, Robert continued, your contribution to Madison's wedding represents a partial repayment of our investment in your success. It's not really our money you'd be spending. It's money you already owe us. Uncle Harold shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Robert, I don't know if we should be thinking about family relationships in terms of debt and repayment. Harold, you're a businessman. Margaret replied coolly. You understand that investments require returns. We invested in Denver's future, and now it's time for him to invest in Madison's happiness. Aunt Patricia's expression suggested she was growing increasingly uncomfortable with the financial calculations and emotional manipulation. Her nursing background had given her extensive experience with family dysfunction, and she seemed to recognize the toxic dynamics playing out in my living room. Grandmother Dorothy spoke up with the authority of her advanced age and family position. Denver, when I was raising my children during the Depression, we understood that families take care of each other. Everyone contributes what they can when someone needs help. The emotional weight of my grandmother's words was significant. Dorothy had survived genuine hardship, had raised her family during an era when mutual support meant the difference between survival and starvation. Her perspective carried the authority of lived experience and generational wisdom. But Grandma Dorothy, I began carefully. When I needed help with college, my parents told me I was on my own. Margaret's face flushed with indignation. That was completely different. College was your choice, your investment in your own future. Madison's wedding is a family celebration that benefits everyone. The double standard was so glaring it left me momentarily speechless. My education had been dismissed as a personal luxury, while Madison's wedding was being elevated to the status of family necessity. Madison, who had been quietly observing the family dynamics, suddenly stood up from her position near the wedding planning materials. Wait, what do you mean Denver was on his own for college? I thought you guys helped him. The room fell silent as every adult realized Madison had been unaware of my struggle for educational funding. She had assumed our parents had supported my college years the same way they had supported every other aspect of her life. Madison, honey, that's not important right now, Margaret said quickly, trying to redirect the conversation away from potentially damaging revelations. But it is important, Madison insisted, her voice rising with confusion. If Denver had to pay for college by himself, how did he manage it? College is so expensive. Uncle Harold cleared his throat and spoke with obvious discomfort. Madison, your brother worked multiple jobs and took out loans to fund his education. It was quite challenging for him. The look of shock on Madison's face suggested she was beginning to grasp the scope of disparate treatment within our family. She turned to our parents with growing bewilderment. You didn't help him pay for college at all. Before my parents could craft a response, I heard the distinct sound of my phone recording app activating. In the chaos of the family intervention, someone had accidentally triggered the voice recording function, and my phone was now documenting everything being said in my living room. What my family didn't realize was that I had intentionally activated the recording app before opening my front door. I had suspected this confrontation would involve emotional manipulation and potential threats, and I wanted a complete record of everything being said. Robert's voice cut through the tension with growing desperation. Denver, we've already spoken with our attorney about family financial obligations. There may be legal remedies if you refuse to honor your commitments to Madison's wedding. The threat was now explicit. My parents were prepared to pursue legal action to force me to pay for my sister's wedding. They had escalated from emotional manipulation to potential litigation, had crossed the line from family pressure to legal coercion. Harold stood up abruptly from his chair, his face grave with concern. Robert, Margaret, I think we need to step back and reconsider what we're doing here. This doesn't feel right. But my parents were too invested in their campaign to retreat now. They had committed themselves publicly, had borrowed money against my assumed contribution, had created financial obligations that required my compliance to fulfill. The recording device in my pocket continued capturing every word, every threat, every admission of their manipulative strategy. Evidence was accumulating that would prove valuable in whatever confrontations lay ahead. The family intervention had left my apartment feeling contaminated with tension and resentment. After everyone departed, Madison remained behind. her wedding planning materials scattered across my living room like evidence of a crime scene. Her earlier confidence had evaporated, replaced by confusion and growing suspicion about our family's financial dynamics. "Denver, I need to understand something," she said, settling cross-legged on my carpet amid the wedding fabric samples. "If Mom and Dad didn't help you with college, how did they afford all the stuff they bought during those years?" Her question opened a door I had been afraid to walk through for 8 years. The next morning, I called in sick to work and began what would become the most enlightening and disturbing investigation of my life. My first stop was Janet Walsh's accounting office downtown. Janet had been our family's financial advisor for over 15 years, handling tax preparation and business consulting for both my parents and Uncle Harold. She was a practical woman in her early 50s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense approach to financial matters. "Denver, I'm surprised to see you here," Janet said, greeting me in her cluttered office filled with client files and tax documents. "Your parents mentioned you were taking care of Madison's wedding expenses, but I didn't expect you to want direct involvement in the financial planning." The casual mention of my supposed financial commitment confirmed that my parents had been spreading their version of events throughout their professional network. Janet clearly believed I had volunteered to fund the wedding, rather than being pressured into an obligation I had never accepted. "Janet, I need to understand my family's financial history better. Can you help me with some background information?" She hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the request. "Denver, you know I can't share specific client information without authorization. Privacy laws are very strict about these matters. I'm not asking for private details. I just need context about some things that don't make sense to me." Over the next hour, Janet shared general observations that painted a disturbing picture of my parents' financial management. She spoke carefully, staying within legal boundaries while providing enough information to guide my investigation. "Your parents have always lived above their means," she admitted reluctantly. "They tend to make optimistic assumptions about future income and take on debt based on those projections." "What kind of debt are we talking about?" "Credit cards, refinanced mortgages, personal loans. They've been juggling financial obligations for years, always finding new sources of credit when previous arrangements become problematic." Janet pulled out a thick folder and flipped through several pages of documents. "I've advised them repeatedly to scale back their lifestyle and focus on debt reduction, but they consistently prioritize immediate gratification over long-term financial stability." The next piece of information hit me like a physical blow. "Denver, there's something else you should know. Your parents established a college fund for Madison when she was born, just like they did for you. But over the years, they systematically withdrew money from both accounts to fund their lifestyle choices. My college fund had been depleted. Madison's college fund had been depleted. Our parents had stolen our educational futures to finance their vacations, luxury purchases, and status-conscious lifestyle." "How much was taken from the college funds?" Janet checked her records carefully. "Each fund had approximately $40,000. Both accounts were completely emptied by the time you reached college age. $80,000 stolen from their children's futures. 2 generations of educational opportunities sacrificed to fund parental indulgence and financial irresponsibility." "Janet, does Madison know about her college fund?" "I don't believe so. Your parents instructed me to handle all communications about the account closures directly with them." My next stop was First National Bank, where I met with customer service representative Linda Chen, who helped me access public records and loan documents related to my parents' mortgage history. The information she provided was staggering in its scope and devastating in its implications. "Your parents' home has been refinanced 4 times in the past 12 years, Linda explained, scrolling through computer records. Each refinance increased the total debt load while extending the payment timeline. The original mortgage had been for $120,000 when my parents purchased the house 22 years ago. Through successive refinancing agreements, the current mortgage balance had ballooned to $350,000, despite years of monthly payments. They've essentially borrowed against the accumulated equity multiple times, using the home as collateral for lifestyle expenses." Linda continued. "This is a common pattern we see with clients who struggle with debt management, but the mortgage information was just the beginning." Linda's computer records revealed a complex web of personal loans, credit lines, and financial obligations that painted a picture of systematic financial mismanagement. "Mr. Denver, I see co-signed loans with several family members. Your grandmother Dorothy co-signed a personal loan for $25,000 last year. Uncle Harold co-signed a business loan for $15,000 2 years ago. My parents had been systematically involving extended family members in their financial disasters, using their good credit ratings and family loyalty to secure additional borrowing capacity. Grandmother Dorothy and Uncle Harold had unknowingly become financial hostages in my parents' debt spiral. That evening, I arranged to meet Madison at a quiet coffee shop downtown, away from family influences and potential eavesdropping. She arrived, looking tired and confused, still processing the revelations from the previous night's family intervention. "Madison, I need to show you something," I said, pulling out printed copies of the financial documents I had gathered. "Our parents have been lying to both of us about money for years." I spread the bank statements, loan documents, and account histories across our small cafe table. Madison stared at the papers with growing horror as I explained each document and its implications. "This is your college fund statement, showing the account balance over time. $40,000 was deposited when you were born, but systematic withdrawals began when you turned 15. Madison's hands trembled as she traced the declining balance with her finger. "But Mom and Dad told me college would be handled when the time came. They said I didn't need to worry about financial aid applications or scholarships. They prevented you from applying for aid because they knew questions would reveal the missing college fund. They wanted to control your educational options to maintain your dependence." The coffee shop buzzed with afternoon conversation while Madison processed the scope of our parents' deception. Her entire worldview was crumbling as she realized that her life of privilege had been funded through theft and manipulation. "Denver, what about the wedding expenses? Where did the money for deposits and planning come from?" I showed her the loan documents revealing Uncle Harold's $15,000 contribution and Grandmother Dorothy's $25,000 co-signature obligation. "They've been borrowing against family members' credit to fund wedding preparations. But that means if the wedding gets canceled, Uncle Harold and Grandma Dorothy lose their money." "Exactly. Our parents created a financial trap using other people's credit. Everyone loses if the wedding doesn't happen, but you and I never consented to the original arrangement." Madison buried her face in her hands as the full scope of manipulation became clear. "How long have they been doing this?" "Years. Probably since before I graduated from high school. They've been living on borrowed money while maintaining the appearance of financial success." When Madison looked up, her eyes were filled with tears of anger and betrayal. "What happened to Tyler? Does he know about any of this?" Tyler Morrison, Madison's fiancé, had been notably absent from the family intervention the previous evening. His absence now made sense in light of the financial revelations. If he understood the true scope of the wedding debt, he might have serious concerns about beginning married life within this dysfunctional financial dynamic. "Madison, there's something else you need to know," I said, pulling out the final document from my folder. "I found loan applications with your signature from last year. Personal loans totaling $18,000. Madison stared at the signature pages with genuine confusion. "I never signed these. I've never applied for loans in my life." The forged signatures represented identity theft and fraud. Our parents had been using Madison's personal information to secure additional credit without her knowledge or consent, making her legally responsible for debts she had never authorized or received. "They've been committing crimes, Madison. Identity theft, fraud, elder financial abuse, with Grandma Dorothy. This isn't just family dysfunction anymore. It's criminal behavior." As we sat in the coffee shop surrounded by evidence of our parents' systematic deception, Madison's transformation was visible and heartbreaking. The sheltered young woman who had arrived believing in fairy tale weddings was disappearing, replaced by someone forced to confront the ugly reality of financial manipulation and family betrayal. The question now was what we would do with this knowledge, and how we would protect ourselves and other family members from further exploitation. Madison stared at the forged loan applications for several minutes, her face cycling through disbelief, anger, and finally a cold determination I had never seen before. The coffee shop around us hummed with ordinary afternoon conversations while we sat surrounded by evidence of our family's criminal financial deception. "I want to confront them directly," Madison said finally, her voice steady despite the tears still glistening in her eyes. "I want to hear them try to explain this to my face." 2 hours later, we stood together on our parents' front porch, the fraudulent loan documents tucked inside Madison's purse like damning evidence in a criminal trial. The house looked exactly as it had throughout our childhood, well-maintained and prosperous, But now I understood the true cost of that carefully constructed appearance. Margaret answered the door wearing her favorite lavender cardigan and an expression of surprised delight. "Madison, darling! And Denver! What a wonderful surprise! Come in, come in!" I was just preparing tea and those little cucumber sandwiches you love. The domestic scene felt surreal given what we had discovered about our parents' criminal behavior. Margaret bustled around the kitchen with cheerful efficiency, while Robert emerged from his home office wearing reading glasses and carrying a stack of financial papers. "Perfect timing," Robert announced. "I've been working on revised budget projections for the wedding. With some creative financing arrangements, we might be able to reduce Denver's contribution to $120,000. Madison set her purse on the kitchen counter with deliberate care. "Dad, before we discuss wedding budgets, I need to ask you about some loan applications." She pulled out the forged documents and placed them on the counter between the teacups and cucumber sandwiches. The domestic tranquility shattered instantly, as both parents recognized the papers and understood their implications. "Madison, honey, those are just temporary financial arrangements to help manage cash flow during wedding planning season," Margaret said quickly, her voice taking on a high-pitched quality that betrayed her panic. "Temporary arrangements using my forged signature." Robert removed his reading glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. "Madison, you don't understand the complexities of family financial management. Sometimes parents need to make decisions quickly to protect their children's interests. Protect my interests by committing identity theft and fraud." The confrontation escalated rapidly as Madison's sheltered worldview collided with the harsh reality of her parents' criminal behavior. She demanded explanations for the depleted college funds, the forged loan applications, and the systematic exploitation of elderly family members. "Where is my college fund money, Mom?" Margaret's carefully constructed composure began cracking under the pressure of direct questioning. "Darling, that money was invested in family stability and security. Every dollar went toward maintaining the home environment that allowed you to flourish." "You mean every dollar went toward luxury cars and European vacations while my brother worked 3 jobs to afford college?" Robert attempted to regain control of the situation by shifting to his authoritarian parental voice. "Madison, you're being influenced by Denver's resentment and bitterness. Has always been jealous of the love and attention we've shown you. Jealous." Madison's voice rose with incredulous anger. "He worked himself nearly to death because you refused to help with college, and now you've stolen my educational fund to pay for your lifestyle." The kitchen that had once felt like the warm heart of our family home now felt like a courtroom where justice was finally being demanded. Madison's transformation was complete and irreversible, as she shed the last vestiges of naive trust in our parents' benevolence. Margaret made one final attempt at emotional manipulation. "Madison, honey, you're upset and not thinking clearly. After everything we've done for you, how can you turn against us like this? After everything you've done to me." "You mean stealing my college fund, forging my signature on loans, lying about Denver's struggles, preventing me from applying for financial aid so I couldn't learn the truth about our finances." The scope of systematic deception was becoming clear, even to our parents, as Madison articulated each element of their criminal enterprise. They had created an elaborate web of lies designed to maintain control over both their children while funding their unsustainable lifestyle. Robert's face flushed red with desperation and anger. "Fine. You want the truth? We spent your college money because we knew Denver would be successful and could support the family. We invested in his education indirectly by maintaining a stable home environment. You invested in his education by forcing him to work 3 jobs and live in poverty. We taught him self-reliance and determination. Look how successful he became without our help. Our approach worked perfectly." The twisted logic was breathtaking. Our parents had retroactively justified their abandonment and theft by claiming credit for my success, had transformed their negligence into a calculated parenting strategy designed to build character through hardship. Madison pulled out her phone and began scrolling through recent text messages. "What about Tyler, Dad? You promised him that Denver was paying for the wedding. That Tyler didn't need to worry about finances. Was that another lie?" Robert's expression shifted uncomfortably. "Tyler needed reassurance that he could provide for you properly. We gave him confidence by explaining that family resources would handle the wedding expenses. Family resources meaning money stolen from Denver through manipulation and guilt." The kitchen fell silent except for the ticking of the antique clock that had marked time throughout our childhood. Madison stood surrounded by the wreckage of her former life, her fairy tale wedding plans destroyed by the reality of criminal family dysfunction. "There's something else," Madison said quietly, pulling out another document from her purse. "I stopped by Tyler's apartment after meeting with Denver. I wanted to be honest with him about everything we discovered." She placed Tyler's handwritten letter on the counter next to the forged loan applications. "Hess calling off the engagement. He said he can't start a marriage built on lies and stolen money." Margaret gasped audibly while Robert's face drained of color. Tyler's departure eliminated any possibility of maintaining the wedding fiction that had justified months of financial manipulation and family exploitation. "Madison, Tyler is just confused and overwhelmed," Margaret said desperately. "Once everything settles down and he understands the situation better, he'll come back." "No, Mom, he won't. Because he's an honest person who doesn't want to be part of a family that commits crimes to fund their lifestyle." The finality in Madison's voice signaled a fundamental shift in family dynamics. She was no longer the sheltered princess who accepted parental authority without question. She had become an adult capable of recognizing manipulation and demanding accountability. "I'm moving out of the house tonight," Madison announced. "I'm staying with my friend Jessica until I can find my own apartment. I can't live with people who steal from their own children." Robert made one last attempt to maintain control. "Madison, you're making a terrible mistake. Where will you get money for rent and living expenses? You've never worked a real job. You need us. I'll figure it out the same way Denver did. I'll get a job, work hard, and build a life based on honesty instead of theft and manipulation." As Madison gathered her belongings and prepared to leave, our parents seemed to finally grasp that their years of financial manipulation had destroyed their family relationships permanently. Their attempts to control their children through money had ultimately driven both of us away. The house that had once represented security and family unity now stood as a monument to greed, deception, and the devastating consequences of choosing financial manipulation over genuine love and support. The week following Madison's confrontation with our parents passed in a blur of legal consultations and evidence gathering. I had arranged a meeting with Sarah Coleman, a family law attorney who specialized in financial fraud and elder abuse cases. Her downtown office overlooked the courthouse where our family's crimes would eventually be adjudicated. Sarah Coleman was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who radiated competence and determination. She had built her practice defending victims of financial exploitation, and her reputation for aggressive prosecution of family fraud cases was legendary among the local legal community. "Denver, what your parents have done represents multiple criminal violations," Sarah explained, reviewing the documents I had compiled. "Identity theft, elder financial abuse, fraud, and potentially racketeering given the systematic nature of their criminal enterprise." She spread the evidence across her conference table. Forged loan applications, depleted college fund statements, mortgage refinancing documents showing systematic equity theft, and recorded conversations capturing my parents' admissions of criminal behavior. "The recording of their threats to pursue legal action against you is particularly damaging. It demonstrates consciousness of guilt and willingness to use intimidation to cover up their crimes." Sarah's legal strategy was multifaceted and devastating in its scope. We would file criminal complaints with the district attorney's office, pursue civil restitution for the stolen college funds, and seek protective orders preventing further financial exploitation of elderly family members. "Your grandmother Dorothy is particularly vulnerable. The $25,000 loan she co-signed represents classic elder financial abuse. We can get that debt discharged and pursue criminal charges against your parents for exploitation." 3 days later, I arranged what would be the final family meeting in my parents' living room. I had told them I wanted to discuss a potential compromise regarding Madison's wedding expenses, but my actual agenda involved exposing their criminal behavior to the entire family while documenting their responses. The gathering included all the same family members who had participated in the earlier intervention. My parents, Uncle Harold, Aunt Patricia, and Grandmother Dorothy. Madison attended reluctantly, still processing her transformation from sheltered princess to independent adult. I arrived carrying a briefcase containing legal documents, and my phone set to record mode. Sarah Coleman waited in her car outside, ready to serve papers if the confrontation escalated beyond verbal accusations. "Thank you all for coming," I began, standing near the fireplace where family photographs documented decades of carefully constructed appearances. I asked everyone here because we need to address some serious problems with our family's financial arrangements. My father Robert shifted uncomfortably in his familiar armchair, while my mother Margaret perched on the sofa edge with the rigid posture of someone expecting attack. Uncle Harold and grandmother Dorothy looked confused and concerned, unaware of the criminal revelations about to unfold. Before we discuss Madison's wedding, I want to share some information I've discovered about our family's financial history. I opened my briefcase and began distributing copies of the evidence I had compiled. Uncle Harold's face paled as he recognized his loan documents and realized the scope of financial obligation he had unknowingly assumed. Grandmother Dorothy required Patricia's help to read the elder abuse documentation that revealed how her credit and savings had been systematically exploited. Robert, Margaret, these documents show years of systematic fraud and theft, I announced, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my system. Depleted college funds, forged loan applications, elder financial abuse, and criminal exploitation of family relationships. My parents' attempts to justify their behavior became increasingly desperate as the evidence mounted. Robert claimed the college fund expenditures were justified family investments, while Margaret insisted the forged signatures were parental prerogatives designed to protect their children's financial interests. Denver, you're taking isolated financial decisions out of context, Robert protested. Every family handles money differently, and our approach has always prioritized family unity and mutual support. Mutual support, I repeated, pulling out the recording device that had captured their previous threats. Let me play something for everyone. The recorded conversation filled the living room with damning evidence of my parents' willingness to pursue legal action against me for refusing to fund Madison's wedding. Their voices discussing attorney consultations and potential litigation strategies created an atmosphere of shocked silence among the assembled family members. Uncle Harold stood up from his chair, his face flushed with anger and betrayal. Robert, you used my credit to fund wedding preparations without telling me the money depended on forcing Denver to pay. Grandmother Dorothy's voice trembled with hurt and confusion. Margaret, did you really make me co-sign loans to cover your personal expenses? The family unity that my parents had claimed to protect was disintegrating as their victims realized the scope of exploitation they had endured. Aunt Patricia, with her nursing background and crisis management experience, quickly recognized the toxic dynamics and began organizing protective responses. Dorothy, you need to speak with a lawyer immediately about those co-signed loans, Patricia advised. Harold, we should contact the bank about fraud protection for any accounts linked to Robert and Margaret. As the confrontation reached its peak, I made the final revelation that would completely destroy my parents' remaining credibility. There's one more thing everyone should know. I've been working with attorney Sarah Coleman to file criminal complaints against Robert and Margaret for multiple felonies, including elder abuse, identity theft, and fraud. The announcement created a moment of stunned silence before erupting into chaos. My mother began crying hysterically while my father accused me of destroying the family through vindictive prosecution of honest mistakes. Denver, you can't seriously intend to have your own parents arrested, Robert said, his voice breaking with desperation and disbelief. I intend to protect other family members from further exploitation and ensure that criminal behavior has appropriate consequences. Madison, who had remained silent throughout most of the confrontation, finally spoke up with quiet determination. Denver's doing the right thing. Someone needs to stop this before more people get hurt. Uncle Harold nodded grimly, his business experience helping him recognize the legal inevitability of the situation. Robert, Margaret, you've put everyone at risk through your financial crimes. Denver's protecting the rest of us. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Coleman. Are you ready for me to serve the papers? I looked around the living room at my family members, processing the devastating revelations and criminal implications. My parents sat together on the sofa, their carefully constructed world of financial manipulation finally collapsing under the weight of legal accountability. Yes, I texted back. Come in now. The doorbell rang 30 seconds later, and Sarah Coleman entered the house carrying legal documents that would formally begin the criminal prosecution process. Her presence transformed the family confrontation into an official legal proceeding with serious consequences for everyone involved. The era of financial manipulation and emotional exploitation was officially ending, replaced by legal accountability and protective justice for the victims of my parents' systematic criminal behavior. 6 months later, I stood in the hallway outside Courtroom C at the county courthouse, watching my parents emerge from their sentencing hearing with their court-appointed attorney. Robert had received 18 months in minimum security prison for elder financial abuse and identity theft. Margaret faced 12 months of supervised probation and community service, along with mandatory financial counseling and restitution payments to family members. The legal proceedings had moved with surprising efficiency once the district attorney's office reviewed the evidence Sarah Coleman had compiled. The recorded conversations, forged documents, and systematic pattern of financial exploitation made prosecution straightforward and conviction virtually guaranteed. Uncle Harold's $15,000 loan had been discharged through victim restitution funds, and grandmother Dorothy's forced co-signature obligations were voided under elder abuse protections. Both had received financial counseling to prevent future exploitation and protect their retirement security. Madison stood beside me in the courthouse hallway, wearing her new work uniform from the veterinary clinic, where she had found employment as a receptionist and animal care assistant. The job paid modestly but provided health insurance and opportunities for advancement within the veterinary field she had always loved but never been encouraged to pursue. "How do you feel seeing them like this?" Madison asked, watching our parents walk toward the courthouse exit with slumped shoulders and defeated expressions. "Sad, but relieved." I answered honestly. "Sad that it came to this, but relieved that other people are protected from their schemes." The legal resolution had been just the beginning of our family's reconstruction process. Madison had moved into a small apartment near the veterinary clinic and begun building an independent life based on honest work rather than manipulated financial support. She attended evening classes at the community college, working toward certification as a veterinary technician. Tyler Morrison had reached out to Madison 2 months after the engagement ended, expressing regret for abandoning her during the family crisis. But Madison had politely declined his request for reconciliation, explaining that she needed time to discover who she was as an independent person before considering romantic relationships. "I spent 24 years being someone's pampered princess," she had explained to me over coffee. "I need to find out who Madison really is when she's not being supported by stolen money." The transformation in my sister had been remarkable to witness. The sheltered young woman who had once expected others to fund her dreams had become a determined adult working to build her own future through honest effort and personal responsibility. 3 months after the sentencing, I established the Harrison Family Educational Foundation, using money I had originally planned to invest in my retirement accounts. The foundation provided scholarships to young people from families unable to fund higher education, with particular emphasis on students working multiple jobs to support their academic goals. Madison served on the foundation's selection committee, bringing her own experience with educational obstacles and family financial dysfunction to help identify deserving candidates. Our first scholarship recipient was Jessica Martinez, an 18-year-old working 3 part-time jobs while maintaining a 4.0 grade average in high school. "Jessica reminds me of Denver at that age," Madison told the selection committee during our monthly meeting. "She has the same determination to succeed despite impossible circumstances." The foundation also sponsored financial literacy workshops for young adults, teaching practical money management skills and warning signs of family financial manipulation. Madison often spoke at these workshops, sharing her story of awakening to financial abuse and building independent security. Uncle Harold and Aunt Patricia became strong supporters of both the foundation and our family healing process. Harold's plumbing business provided scholarships for students interested in skilled trades, while Patricia used her nursing network to identify young people struggling with educational costs. Grandmother Dorothy, despite her advanced age, found renewed purpose in mentoring scholarship recipients and sharing her experience with financial exploitation. Her testimony about elder abuse had been instrumental in securing convictions against my parents and establishing precedents for protecting elderly family members. "Young people need to understand that family doesn't mean accepting abuse," she often told workshop participants. "Real love means supporting each other's growth and independence, not creating dependence through manipulation." The house where Madison and I had grown up was eventually sold to cover restitution payments and legal costs. Our parents would begin rebuilding their lives after serving their sentences, but their opportunities for financial manipulation had been permanently curtailed through court-ordered supervision and credit monitoring. Madison and I established new holiday traditions that focused on genuine family connection rather than material excess. We volunteered together at homeless shelters during Thanksgiving, organized toy drives for underprivileged children at Christmas, and created our own celebration rituals based on service and gratitude. "Remember when family gatherings were all about who spent the most money on gifts?" Madison reflected during our first independent holiday season. Now they're about actually caring for people who need help. The foundation grew steadily as word spread about our mission to support educational opportunities for financially disadvantaged students. Local businesses began contributing resources and job training opportunities, creating pathways for scholarship recipients to build stable careers after graduation. My own career had flourished as I channeled the energy previously consumed by family dysfunction into professional development and community leadership. Technovision Solutions promoted me to senior management, and I used my position to create internship opportunities for Foundation scholarship recipients. Sarah Coleman remained involved as the Foundation's legal advisor, ensuring our scholarship programs complied with educational regulations and protected recipient privacy. Her expertise in family financial law helped us develop resources for young people experiencing financial abuse in their own families. Denver and Madison's story is unfortunately not unique, Sarah explained during a community workshop on family financial abuse. Many young people struggle with relatives who view their children's success as an opportunity for exploitation. The workshops we sponsored became popular resources for college students, young professionals, and anyone dealing with family financial pressure. Participants learned to recognize manipulation tactics, establish healthy boundaries, and build financial independence, despite family opposition. Madison often concluded her workshop presentations with advice that had grown from her personal transformation. Your family's financial problems are not your responsibility to solve. Your education and future security should never be sacrificed to fund other people's irresponsible choices. As I reflected on the year since my parents had first demanded I fund Madison's wedding, I felt profound gratitude for the crisis that had ultimately liberated our entire family from years of financial manipulation and emotional exploitation. The pain of confronting family dysfunction had been intense, but the relief of living honestly and supporting genuine family love was immeasurable. Madison and I had discovered that real family meant empowering each other's growth rather than enabling dependence and exploitation. Standing in my apartment, surrounded by scholarship applications from determined young people working to build better futures, I understood that our parents' greatest failure had been their inability to see that true family success meant raising independent, ethical adults capable of contributing positively to their communities. The Harrison Family Educational Foundation would continue growing and serving students who reminded me of myself at 18. Young people with big dreams, strong work ethics, and families unable or unwilling to provide support. Through their success, Madison and I had transformed our painful experience into meaningful service that honored the struggle while building hope for the future. Have you ever faced family pressure to sacrifice your financial security for someone else's wants rather than needs? How do you think families should balance supporting each other while encouraging individual responsibility and independence? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective on this challenging topic. If this story resonated with you, please like this video to help others find resources for dealing with family financial manipulation. Subscribe to my channel for more stories about overcoming family dysfunction and building healthy boundaries. And please share this video with anyone who might benefit from learning about financial abuse warning signs and recovery strategies. Thank you for listening to my story and supporting the message that real family love means empowering each other's growth rather than exploiting each other's success. I hope your own family relationships are built on mutual respect, honest communication, and genuine care for each other's well-being.